Broadcasted through local media and local media outlets as news. If you wish to have a copy of this, please reach out to the administration or the school committee, and we'll be more than happy to give you a copy. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Everyone had the chance to look over the minutes? And everyone's kosher? I get a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Joe, seconded by Megan. All in favor? I'm sorry. All in favor except for Jen. Next, announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Anybody have anything to bring up to the committee? Oh,
I've got one.
Kevin?
I just want to thank Dell for hosting the Woodland fifth graders and working with them on engaging STEM activities. They also toured our high school business students, and they made a generous Chromebook donation. So we're excited about partnering with Dell in the future and appreciate their support. The second piece I want to touch base on is Milford High School, and this has been in a couple of the local newspapers, was declared an official Special Olympics National Banner Unified Champion School by Special Olympics International. And Milford High School is one of only 10 schools in Massachusetts and 131 schools nationwide to achieve this status for the 2017-2018 school year. A Special Olympics Unified Champion School has an inclusive school climate and exudes a sense of collaboration, engagement, and respect for all members of the student body and staff. And a Unified Champion School receiving national banner recognition is one that has demonstrated a commitment to inclusion by meeting 10 national standards of excellence. These standards were developed by a national panel of leaders from Special Olympics and the education community. The primary activities within these standards include Special Olympics Unified Sports, where students with and without disabilities train and compete as teammates, and inclusive youth leadership and whole school engagement. And I want to congratulate all our faculty, staff, students, and volunteers for all of their hard work and efforts to make our Unified Sports Program, Special Olympics, and Best Buddies program a huge success. These efforts all contribute to a positive school culture and community, and I think we'll be hosting some members from Special Olympics and Unified Sports during the second meeting in October as well, so they can kind of talk about the programming. So very exciting.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Joe?
Just a reminder, because I don't think we have another meeting before this, but we have the budget forum coming up on October 9th.
That's right.
So, and the purpose of that forum is to give an overview of our budget and how our budget ties to is aligned with the strategic plan, and then just go over the process that we use to develop the budget and answer any questions that the community may have.
Yep.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? All right. Next on the agenda is invitation to speak. Anyone care to come up? No? You giving
High school update?
high school stuff? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. How are we?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So, if you don't know me, I am Josh Legore. I'm here giving the Milford High School student update just for this meeting. I'll just start real fast with, fall sports are in full swing. Everybody's playing, everybody's competing. So everybody, there's games every day. Everybody's doing well. Quick shout out to the boys soccer team. The boys soccer team is off to one of their best starts in program history. Those guys actually, I think they only have one loss in the season right now. I think they have 5 or 6 wins, along with 1 or 2 draws. So those guys are actually doing really good. They're second in the Hawkmock right now, so quick shout out to them. I know there was just auditions for the fall play. The fall play is escaping me right now. I forget what it is called, but I know that's in November. So that's a drama. That's not the musical. The musical's in the spring. But that's got everybody in the music department and all that stuff up in arms and excited. Also, right now, everybody recently did just get Chromebooks. Thank you, Dr. Joseph, in the back for helping distribute those. So the entire school was basically up to date in Chromebooks, and every student has one. I know I use mine almost every day. So also, the Italian exchange program is going on right now in full swing. They're about actually to leave, but they're actually about to be replaced. But with the Spanish exchange students who will be here, I think this weekend. So I know the Italian exchange, they're having a lot of fun. I don't have an Italian student staying with me, but I have been able to, stay and hang out with some of them. I know they're having a good time. I do know they went to Boston today to check out Harvard. I know they got back from New York yesterday. They did 2 or 3 days in New York. So they're having a great time. They're really loving it here. So that all wraps in with the school. I think that's really it. There's really nothing else. It's a little slow right now, but because everybody's still getting back into the swing of things. But other than that, I think that's pretty much it. if you have any questions, I can try and answer them. But
Anybody have any questions for this gentleman?
Oh, boy.
God.
What do you got, Jim?
Gee, I didn't see that coming.
What?
All I wanted to say was I had an opportunity to give the Italian exchange students a tour of Dell this week. It was fantastic. I also saw their involvement at the football game. It's a great program. I also want to couple that by saying I also did have
Oh yes, I was going to.
Coach Dion's business class in for Dell. We started our second round. We did a tour. In the first round, this round I was lucky enough to have Josh and a few of the other kids as the groups break up. We covered sales, sales engagement, field engagement, and our go-to-market strategy. So it was, it's an amazing program. Alex is doing an amazing job. I'm very excited to be part of it, and I'm sure the other companies, I know, Joey, they came to see you at CAT, so I can't say enough good things about it. I'm looking forward to being even further engaged with them.
Yeah, absolutely. From like the student perspective, I know that's something that goes through here. And that's definitely something that everybody in the class. There's only 10 of us right now, but for the seniors, but I know the junior class that are in there is much bigger. It's definitely something that I've taken not for granted. It's definitely something very unique and very cool to be able to. I mean, it kind of gets me out of school a little bit, but it's within that block, so I'm not really missing anything too important. But it's definitely something cool to be able to go into like the real field. Like I've been to 2 Dell buildings. I obviously came to the CAT building. We went to Consigli yesterday or 2 days ago. That building's really cool. I've never been in there, so it's a lot of unique experiences for us. That it's an applied program, but it's something that is definitely worth for a high school kid. And actually, I forgot to mention our homecoming football game. Homecoming is coming up. That is October 5th for us. I forgot they wanted me to put that in. We are playing Sharon, 7 o'clock under the lights. It should be a great atmosphere. The past 2 home games have been great. It's been great community turnout. So I would look forward to the same thing. And, that's pretty much all I got. So.
Real quick, what's the growing vibe with the kids that are going to these companies like Dell and Milton Cat? I mean, is it a good sense of like, wow, this is pretty cool? Or
yeah, actually, I mean, I've thought it. I mean, everybody has their own little thing that they're looking to get out of it, but everybody has seemed like the response that we get. We come back to school, we sit down, we talk about it, and we talk about what we do, and if we liked it or not. And everybody seems to be really engaged in what we're doing. I mean, what we're doing is the big part of it. Is our semester-long project, because the class is only a semester, it's not a full year, is, we get into these groups, we have 2 separate teams, and we have to create our own business plan and business model. So we go to these companies like CAT and Dell, or Consigli, Waters, and Milford Federal is the other one, and, they give us lessons on the finance, marketing, sales, and some other things. Those are really the main points that we hit, and then we come back to class and we use what we learn to put into like a business plan. So, and then at the end of the semester, we'll sit down, and I think Dion's trying to get Mr. Consigli, Dr. McIntyre, and a couple other of administration to sit down and kind of like Shark Tank it almost and listen to our business plan. So
good.
It should
We're
be
in.
pretty cool. Perfect. Yeah, it should be good.
Good. I'm glad it's a success.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
else?
just had a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, is that a full year class or a half year?
Half. It's
And
only half.
It's an elective?
Yes.
And do you remember what the name of it is? Or?
So right now it's called the Business and Banking Program. I believe
Okay.
next year it's changing to the Business Management Program. I don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure
Okay.
because we don't just work with a bank anymore. We work with 4 other companies.
Yeah.
So the way that the class works, it's a double block period.
Okay.
So like you get 2 electives in your schedule, and it kind of has to fit.
Yeah.
So it's a back-to-back. So I have 1 period. It's kind of like the HTM program, the hospitality and hospitality program,
Yeah.
to where they sit in class for, I don't know, an hour and 45 minutes
Okay.
doing all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
The 2 blocks, they vary in what we do. It's kind of like, a computer-based and like a business-based.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Anybody else?
Good stuff.
All right.
Right. Thank you, brother.
No problem. Thank you. Have
Thank
a good
you.
rest of your night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.
I never liked him.
Hey, neither do
I know, right? Next on the
just that part of the tape.
next on the agenda is the summer lunch program recognition. How would you like to come up,
Two chairs.
Mr. Kaplan?
We'll grab a chair. Ladies want to come up?
Stand behind us, all of us.
Yeah, that's good.
You start our posse, look at this, man.
Yeah, we brought our muscle.
Can
You don't want to just be a part of it anyway?
This is it. Kind of food piece. You provide the food.
Kind of smile as they're talking to them.
So, hi everybody. I'm Kimberly Cohen. I'm the Senior Director of Health Innovation with the Hockomock Area YMCA, and I'm here with our fantastic partners. And we really talk about this couldn't be possible without the partners in this room and all the people that you see. This gives me goosebumps. Like, look at this. This is amazing. Kind of standing behind us and the hundreds of individuals that really make this program happen. So that we were able to serve thousands of meals this summer to be able to impact the hunger crisis that's happening in our community and really fill that gap. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about everybody's role, but if you want to start and talk about the Milford Humanitarian Coalition.
Thank you. My name is Mike Kaplan. I am with the Milford Area Humanitarian Coalition. I have been the chairman of the summer lunch program since its inception. We have agreed to change the name of the program to the Summer Meals Program because, as you will hear, we are serving thousands of breakfasts in addition to lunches and well. So it's really a misnomer at this point, which I'm happy to say, and I'm happy to report that we're thrilled with the evolution. When we started this 5 years ago, we did a pilot program, 2,200 meals were served, then it went up to 7,000, then about to 95, and now I'm going to put you in suspense for the final number of what we did this year. And so, but from the Humanitarian Coalition, which is a bunch of organizations in the town that come together and try to pool our resources, this is one of the most, if not the most successful program that we are currently doing. I'm absolutely thrilled with the program. As already said, it's like 3 pillars. We have the town, and we have the YMCA, and when we have the community, all combined in, working for the same goal. I can't stress enough, without any one of these pillars, in my opinion, of the 3 of us, I'm not sure the program really works as effectively as it currently does. It's really the pooling of all of us together. We each do our own little point or participation, if you will. I'm certainly not ordering meals or preparing meals. I mean, without these folks over here, she doesn't look nearly as good as she does, and she's absolutely fantastic. I said it last year, this town is extremely lucky to have Carla and to have the support staff behind you. I think you should be thrilled, you should be proud. I mean, we all should be. This is, in my opinion, a program that other communities are looking at and saying, how did you do this? How did this come together? It really addresses a need in the community. I'm thrilled to be a part of it, thrilled to be a part of such wonderful people, and just thank you for the opportunity of coming here today.
Carla, you ready for the big reveal? And then I'll talk about some of the highlights of all the good stuff. But since you are the meal lady, do you want to kind of talk about our big number of meals?
This year, yeah, it's pretty exciting. And like Mike said, I am, Milford School Food Service and Milford Public Schools to be a part of this team is wonderful. I have a great staff who's in the trenches every day, making the lunches, make sure they get delivered to the right places. And without these guys, it wouldn't be here. They're the ones that make me look good. You're right, Mike. I just make sure they have what they need. With that said, 14,516 meals this year, this summer that we did, in basically a 2-month span, breakfast and lunch. Memorial School was our open site. We had 2 closed sites, Woodland with our programs that run with ELL and some special ed programs that run there, and the youth center.
Yep.
So
I mean, that's up 5,000 meals
it's like
from almost approximately from the year before. It's absolutely fantastic.
so we were busy.
I think some of the other,
And what else it was great this year too is we piloted a backpack program on the weekends at Memorial School, in which we had funds to purchase items to go home for the weekends with some of these families, in which on Fridays, Lisa, Fran, you guys worked at Memorial, you guys can even chime in and say how happy these people were to have something over the weekend and still for meals and for food in their house and snacks. And I thought that was a great thing, and we're trying to kick it off even at Brookside now. I know I have a meeting next week with some people from Brookside that they want to start that at that school too. So it's a win-win for Milford Public Schools, Milford Food Service to work with these guys, and especially the Hockomock taking the lead in the community partnerships involved with Mike and his group. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, I think just to really add a couple more great details that I think that happened over the summer, besides the quantity of meals that we're just so thrilled about the impact that this program has had. And just so you know, when people come to the program, it's all about removing the stigma associated with hunger. And so many people are embarrassed or ashamed or have some immigration status challenges where there's fear associated with hunger. So they're not receiving the food assistance that's available to them in the communities because they're worried about providing their information. And with that, we know that the hunger crisis exists, and Carla sees it every day. September, she's just buried in applications to get people to apply for the food that they need and that they deserve. And so we're able to fill that gap now, not only Monday through Friday in the summer, but as Carla shared over the weekend, we received a grant from Chana, which is a local organization, and we gave out 291 bags of food to families to get them through the weekends and solve that hunger crisis as well. We had over 100 volunteers, some of which you see standing here. It always impresses me that people are willing to give up the middle of their day in the summer on some of the most gorgeous beach days ever. And we have students, all the way teachers who come and read to the kids during the summer that don't need to be there, but they're there because they want to be there, because they're passionate individuals that want to give back to their community. And it means so much to the kids and families to see faces that they trust and faces that they know, and that's what brings them to the program. The programs themselves were also amazing in terms of the STEM, the fire department, the police department, touch a truck concepts. We gave out bike helmets because a lot of the kids in this community just don't have the bike helmets that they need, and they're riding around safely. We even had a dad come up that doesn't have a car, and he said, and his son translated for him, that he was in need of a helmet to get to work safely because he's riding his bike on busy roads. So the other big exciting thing that we did with a team of Dell volunteers, we were able to stuff 250 backpacks filled with school supplies that were donated to the kids in Milford as well, so that kids can start their school day. Dell variously donated a lot of backpacks as well as supplies, as well as other community partners, and that was a great way to increase that program as well.
One thing I would just like to add, although we call it a meals program, there are a ton of activities going on during this time frame. These kids, it's congregate eating. We the volunteers are interactive with the kids. They're having activities. They're playing games. They're enjoying themselves. I mean, it's absolutely, and that's a whole nother component that we really haven't really addressed, but needs to be known, I think, because that's just fabulous. And other kids are playing with other kids, and it's just breaking down barriers again and again. And I want to thank the town for giving us the opportunity to do this again this year. I sincerely do appreciate that. I mean, we can't do it without your permission and without your blessing, if you will, and we hope you consider us again next year for the same program. Oh, the food truck. The food truck. Right, the food truck. That food truck.
It's coming. Right?
Great. Any questions about the program?
Go ahead, Mike.
I
Yeah.
have just two comments and a
Of course.
question. First and foremost, when I think about what makes the Milford community and the Milford Public Schools so great, this is it. So kudos to each and every one of you who gave an hour to contribute. It warms my heart that you would spend time doing this. I think it's fantastic. I happened to be at Memorial on one of the lunch days, and they had the Patriots mascot there.
Oh.
So I definitely support it was so lively and welcoming. It was remarkable. How is the program funded?
Yeah, so the program's funded through a variety of things, and yes, thank you to Brian Early, the general manager, who's our former board chair at the YMCA. So it's helpful to have those kind of connections that we can pull. And he's so passionate about the program. The program is funded through a variety of opportunities. So one, Mary Kate, who can't be here tonight, and Shannon, who are the leaders from the Y program aspect, and really make this work with Carla and with Mock. Mary Kate writes a significant amount of grants every year, so that helps subsidize the things like the crayons, the supplies, any of sort of the consumable-based products that we need to do that, as well as like the bags of groceries, for example, that kind of concept.
And then, if I may, and then
yeah.
we also mock. I will canvass and actually approach like the Rotary, the Lions,
Yeah.
the banks, all sorts of organizations. Bright Insurance has always been a contributor. So we canvass from different avenues, different resources, and again, the combination of the resources allows us to expand every year. We have small businesses from, like my size to large corporations, Milford National Bank, Milford Federal, Unibank. It's tremendous the amount of entities that really support, and I don't know how to write a grant, so thank God we have that component over there to assist. So again, the combination of resources to answer your question.
And it really, what Mike's organization that he represents does for this program is pay for all the adult-based meals. So those are not, there's a federal reimbursement program which pays for the youth-based meals. CADLA provides us a very low-cost option, and then we make kind of cents on the dollar for each meal that's served, and that money then gets reinvested into the program. So it's a break-even program model. But what really sets our program, I was just meeting with Senator Kennedy's office, who does a similar program in a different community, and they were saying, how do you pay for the adult meals? And really by partnering to do that, the adults need the food too. And really by sitting and having kind of that sense of community that's built by sitting with individuals in your community, and you don't know, because there's not like all the low-income people sit here and all of the volunteers sit here. When you walk in, everybody is just the community, and it's really reflective of what we want to see.
Yeah, and so the adults can be either volunteers, or the adults can be people bringing a child to the program.
Yep.
It's one or the other. We have T-shirts that all the volunteers wear with all the sponsors on it. So we're always trying to think and expand the program. And so we have, believe it or not, like you folks have your meetings, we are constantly having meetings throughout the year to prepare for the next year to see how we can kind of grow the program. And again, it's tremendous.
So much to be proud of. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions?
So, Carl, I have to put you on the spot, but offhand, do you know how many free and reduced lunches we offer in the schools right now? Is it close to 2,000? Does that sound?
We're about 49%.
Okay. Yeah, so probably close to 2,000 students then if we have 1,400 students.
Right.
Yeah. So there's clearly
Breakfast
a
and
need
lunch.
No,
in
clearly
this
a need.
community. Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. And as you pointed out, what I really appreciate is the fact that you make this a really fun environment, that it is inclusive, that you remove the stigma, and that's what attracts the kids and the families. So great job. Can't thank you enough for what you're doing.
One of the new elements we added this year was really a more culturally sensitive lens. And we tried to really approach, knowing that we were really trying to serve such a diverse population, of having volunteers that could speak different languages and having activities. And we engaged restaurants that really represented different cultural foods that come in to sample. And we had a chef, Vanessa, from Project Bread, who came in and did some different activities around different cultural sensitivities as well. So
And
I think we really
some of the
saw
lunches
that.
that were served
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you
We
created
did a
it.
hot meal every Thursday.
Yep.
So, and that was pretty good receptive from
Absolutely.
from participants.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that going next year too.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
You might have said this at the beginning, but I think in the first year, we saw lower percentages or lower numbers than you would have liked. And do you remember the comparison of how many meals you served in the first year compared to this year?
The very first year, the pilot year we did?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
very first year was about 2,200 meals or so.
In this year, you were
Approximately.
14,000.
Yeah.
We did 14.5 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Last year was just under 10.
Okay.
So the first year we got involved was around 5.
They came in
Yeah.
year 2, we got the Y in, and that's when it
Okay.
jumped from about 2,200 to about
7,000.
7,000 somewhere in the sevens.
Well, I think I remember feeling a sense of disappointment in one of those very first years that the numbers of meals served wasn't anywhere near the capacity that you felt you had. And
Well, we knew
About
we hadn't reached, and we still. I'm
Yeah.
going to be honest. We still have a language barrier when we're trying to get the word out. We post signs. We do go and we try to go door to door. We have a blitz day, if you will, for lack of better phraseology, and we try to get out. But honestly, a lot of people speak other languages other than English, and so if I go up to a door, I'm having. It's printed in multiple languages on paper. But when you're trying to express it verbally, I have to admit we're a little we're not quite where I would like to be. I mean, we're gonna admit where we could improve. And we're trying to improve. We're trying to work with people who can come in and help us communicate and break the barriers of the language barrier, that is, so more people know. And it's slowly working. The program's catching on. Everybody knows every summer now, at least the last 3 years, if you look at those numbers, it's increasing. I'd be more concerned if the numbers were going the opposite way, which they're clearly not.
No, I think it's remarkable, and I think it's a testament to all of you. But I think you walk around Milford now, and you know what this is, and you see the publicity. And I think, they say you build it and they will come. And I think that's true to an extent, but I think the marketing has to be there. And so maybe now that you're at this point where people want it and appreciate it, so maybe that's your next challenge. How do you branch out to, even more languages, or
Right.
to some of the people who aren't reading in their own native language, and that's another challenge. But the work you've done is really remarkable, and the growth is amazing over a very short period of time. So
Yes.
thank you to all of you for your work.
Yeah, we're over about 33,000 meals or so total from the beginning of the program. So when you add up all these numbers, I mean, that's a good number.
And the key to truly impacting the diverse populations in the community is people want to go to a program where they know people and there's a sense of trust. You don't want to walk in as a stranger. That's not always easy to do.
Yeah.
And especially when you're fearful, or especially when you don't speak the language, or you don't understand what to expect with the food or the activities, or understand it. And I think what we've done is really try to remove those barriers. But we work with 29 different organizations in the greater Milford community, anti-hunger organizations, as well as religious organizations and culturally sensitive organizations that really have already established that trust. And we've really found that was the way that this year the religious leaders really helped promote the program to their congregants and said, come with me, and that we really use that sort of that friendship, building friendship, and having the children translate for their parents and say, like, can you bring a friend or a family, let your neighbor know, and having the community built within our walls of the schools now in the community has been really great. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
Just remind me again, is it held at Memorial in the Youth Center?
Yeah,
Are those
six
the two?
different locations.
different, okay.
So this year we were in Memorial, Woodland, Milford Youth Center, Creative Community Childcare, Children Across America, and Milford Town Library.
Oh, great.
I think what you guys do is absolutely amazing. I couldn't think of anything else that this town, excels in what you guys do. One of my questions is, do you see a lot of out-of-towners coming in, or is it mostly Milford people? You may or may not know this answer, but,
Yeah.
I mean, is it catching on to surrounding towns that might also have
We
this?
don't take
Right.
addresses,
I didn't
so
think so.
we're not allowed to do that. So honestly, it's kind of hard to know that answer, and you may be able to
Yeah.
answer that better.
Just
but-
from word of mouth testimonials, and I'm sure our volunteers and staff see it as well. It's majority of Milford
Yeah.
Yeah.
friends. We do Milford Food Pantries also serves Hopedale, so there is a lot of crossover in terms of some of the anti-hunger organizations will communicate. Many times we find in the anti-hunger community, their transportation is a barrier. So most of the families who come to the program, or we find a large majority walk. So that's where we've been really intentional about our locations and have changed some of those over the years to really make sure that they're in a walkable place that's convenient to public housing or low-income housing areas, and it's communicated out that way. But we find that it is mostly Milford-based. Our volunteers are also mostly Milford-based, but come from Franklin, Bellingham, Hopedale, and really the surrounding communities.
Awesome. I think you guys, it's unbelievable what you guys do. It's shocking, 14,000 meals. I mean, amazing.
So Joe, can I just make 3 comments? One is, it really, and I know it's been said already, but it makes me proud to call this group colleagues and students and community members, and we love the YMCA, we love the Humanitarian Council. The other thing I really love, though, is the entrepreneurial spirit of the group, because we hit the summer where there's a big gap. Now we're talking weekends. The food truck we're talking about to get the food where the people are. Making those connections from a language perspective, from a cultural perspective, providing programming that brings kids in and gets them excited. It's absolutely awesome. I love the program, and I really sincerely want to thank each and every one of you, because what you do is critically important, and quite frankly, it's heroic, because you're meeting a need in the community, and you can't underestimate that. So thank you.
One thing I would say, I would suggest you do what Megan did and come by once during the summer. Just come by and check it out and see what it is, or at Memorial. I think you'd be very surprised and very pleased, each and every one of you. I really do. I know you're pleased, but I think you'd be pleasantly surprised even more, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they might even let you read a story with Pat the Patriot.
Yeah.
Craig's on that fast.
Exactly. But I really, this work is going to continue year round because for us, not only is the planning begun for next year, but as Carla had stated earlier, weekend hunger is still a big challenge, and there's still a gap with full utilization of the 50% of Carla, the students and the families that Carla's feeding out of just the student population is such a large population, and not all of them are utilizing the food assistance programs that are available in the community because of that stigma and fear. And so we're working with the food pantry as well as a grant funder that the YMCA was able to write a grant for the Milford Public Schools to be able to pilot a weekend program, feeding program here, as well as providing and exploring with some snack-based options, because a lot of times kids can't bring the snacks from home or don't have access to that food. So we're excited to work with the PTOs and work with Carla and the team to be able to pilot those strategies as well.
And we've also started our youth at the youth center, our dinner meal, our dinner
Oh
and
yeah,
snack
dinner,
program.
right?
Also,
we offer
piloted
dinner
that
now.
program last year, starting in March, a dinner program at the youth center, and we just kicked it off again September.
Yeah, it's been very popular.
It's pretty popular.
We're just feeding everybody.
Just feed 'em.
It's great. Well, thank you guys so
No,
much
thank
for
you
your
for
time
coming.
today.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
to all the
everything.
amazing people involved.
Pretty cool. All right, next on the agenda is, where am I here?
5.
Oh, sorry, MJ. Come on up, man. Presentation of alternative structured learning day programs.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just by myself, I didn't bring a posse or anything.
In fact, you cleared the room.
I did clear the room. I was going to go with that one first, but have that effect, sadly. Well, thank you for coming. It's always great to come because I think we're sharing this exciting news of our district. Every time I feel like we're talking about something new, even the program you're talking about with community, and for me, I shared a few things with some of the technology co-chairs this week. Part of why I really like this job is the vision that started with Dr. McIntyre, with Craig, and keep moving forward and really taking education to the new and next level. And this is just another initiative and idea that we're bringing forward to you. It's looking at a proposal to have snow days count as one of the school days. And there's many different phrases you might have heard in the community or that we've used, from e-learning day to blizzard bag days, but to have a day that is called due to weather actually count towards one of the school days. And this is an idea that multiple school districts around the Commonwealth have started. And at this point, 6 are utilizing those, from Eastern Mass, Greenfield, Burlington, or is a second one, and more each day are calling to get this approved. I spoke 2 weeks ago to Jeff Wolfson, who's the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Education, to say that Milford is interested in moving in this direction, and talked to me about some of the parameters that we would have to talk through and to make it a full learning day outside of school. And one of the things that he did note was that the Department of Ed is behind this, and the school committee in each town is the final vote on that. And one of the things that we're talking about today is bringing that forward and starting this plan and meeting with both the teachers union, speaking with you, talking about the plan of moving forward with this proposal. And I don't want to go on and on about the proposal. If you have questions, feel free to jump in throughout, but the parameter of it is, if we have a snow day due to weather, that there'll be assignments or online work created prior to that day, that with the cancellation it would trigger that this is the assignment now that will count for that day of schoolwork. For our 1st through 5th graders, it would be more of a physical, something that was brought home either in a folder or some other capacity, so that when that snow is, they could work on it during that day. And for our 6th through 12th graders who have the capacity to bring their Chromebooks home, it would be something online, more of a digital learning assignment through Drive or any other online tool that the teacher is assigned. Again, this would also be developed, approved, and created well before any, hopefully, depending on the weather, it doesn't come too soon, but we're shooting for, mid-November to start looking at to approval of some of these different activities. And the activities would incorporate more than just sit down, do a little bit of an activity, because it does have to count for one full school day, be a little more robust. And it would also not be an activity that was expected to be, due the next day. Typically, in researching some of the different districts that are doing it, ranging from 4 days to 2 weeks to a later date, depending on the project. And that's nothing I want to say right now, this is how it's going to go, because we are going to continue to work with our teachers union. We're going to continue to work at our central office level, as well as sharing with the co-chairs of the steering committee or the school committee for the technology of this is the path we're taking. But this is a direction we are looking to go. We are moving forward with that direction with the excitement that the snow days that we would have, there would be creation of activities and students would create that, have the products. And in the coming weeks, just looking at some more logistics specifics and how we would ensure that this is in full place before it goes into action for the first time.
So if I could add just two things before the committee jumps in with questions. One of the things we're looking at this year is to pilot up to 2 days, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And down the line, I think we might look at do we start it on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th day of for snow days. This year, I'd like to potentially pilot the first 2, just in case if we have a really mild winter, we can actually try it out this year. We've been in contact with the teachers union, and they're on board with piloting it. Craig has been talking to some of the curriculum team leaders about some concepts in terms of how we would kind of roll it out. And I think it would be like a physical blizzard bag at the elementary level, and something through either Google Classroom or through the Chromebook online at the secondary level. And am I leaving anything out, Matt or Craig, before we jump into questions?
No.
Anybody got any questions? Megan?
I guess I'm not clear. Is there a specific requirement in terms of how long you have to spend or how long it would anticipate that you spend to meet?
It's pretty open.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think the districts who've jumped on board have liked about the program, and every program has good things about it and a few issues and hang-ups that everybody's still working through because it's a relatively new concept. But the idea behind it is it's productive learning time, and it's in a critical point of the year. And in bad years, we can lose a week and a half, or 2
Sure.
weeks. And we'd love to get some productivity out of students and good feedback back from the teachers. So there's really it's not
Okay.
very strict time on learning guidelines like we have for the school year. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit open, and I think my conversations with teachers and principals and the teachers union has really been, I think that we're all kind of in this together trying to figure it out, and we're probably going to find some things that don't work,
Sure.
some things that work really well, and I think it's something that we would kind of improve upon over time as well.
So do you envision piloting it, Kevin, and then in the future having a policy that kind of prescribes when you would apply it?
Absolutely. So I
Okay.
think this year we would do, like I said, up to the first 2 days, and we would try it out, and we get
Mhm.
feedback from the students,
Sure.
parents, the teachers, and see what worked about it, what didn't work, what are your concerns, and try to roll that into year 2. And we might go through it and say it's not for Milford,
Yeah.
or we might go through it and say, wow, this really worked
Okay.
well, or parts of it worked well, and we're going to try to tweak the other parts. If
The
that
one
makes
thing
sense.
that's jumped out with me is I like the idea that it's not due the next day. For
Mhm.
some reason, if a student couldn't be supported at home and get it done, I wouldn't want them to be penalized grade-wise. So if it's a longer term,
And,
some
and the other thing
capacity.
districts have found out that are a little ahead of us is sometimes the power goes out.
Sure. Right.
Or internet goes down, or so
Well, if
there's
you're someone who doesn't take the Chromebook home,
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's different
So given
barriers
that
to it.
time,
Yeah. That was the biggest takeaway we came away with. That every
Power.
district kind of said that, hey, it's good to give more lead time.
okay. Thanks. I think it's great to explore. I think it's a great idea. So, and I like the idea of trying it out and kind of working out some kinks.
I just had a question. I also agree that it's definitely an idea to be used. I would almost think more like an emergency situation. So I can understand the reason for trying it this year
Yeah.
on day one, which is never the emergency,
Right.
just to get a sense of
Right.
what does this look like and what might be the kinks. I was just wondering if this has been proposed or shared out with any of the parent groups, like school councils or PTOs, because I think we really need parent buy-ins, because I'm thinking there'll be some questions. So
Yep.
there's kids with some learning challenges or language challenges, so how will those parents and their students feel supported or have an understanding? Like, if you're asked to do this and you can't support your child or there's a problem, what will be the next step in terms of if it's expected the work will be done, does it kind of kick back to the teachers to offer, the academic experience or to support the work getting done? So I think if maybe we had some kind of a standard presentation and maybe a couple of FAQs that we can predict ahead of time, that might be
No, I think
helpful.
that's very important. I think very similar and parallel to how we rolled out the one-to-one initiative, have evening meetings, have meetings during the day, talk about it. When it's a little bit more structured so that we are able to give more concrete answers and develop the FAQ kind of sheet or checklist, having some more concrete ideas around time, assignments, different things will, I think, give parents a little bit more comfort, but that is definitely in the works. That is something we've tried to do here in Milford of any large rollout, not just the technologies, to have an evening presentation, have a presentation during the day if families work at night, because the communication for any of these initiatives is critical, because it is supporting something brand new.
Right.
And whenever that happens, that's when possible stress arises, and having that communication, having that support, and then getting feedback of things that we may not even have thought of helps us before we put it in to say, here's the final product, is critical part of this.
What's the expectation from a teacher perspective? So if there's a snow day, is it the expectation that the teacher would be available for questions or have a flipped classroom type model?
Those are some of the things we're working out, and I think some of that's going to come through a little more clearly when we meet with the CTLs and kind of get out to the teachers. I think that piece is going to be a little bit of a work in progress too, but they would be work days for teachers. So although they would be, kind of like in a lot of professions working from home, they would be like contractual work days for the teachers. So there would be, some expectation of either interaction or communication.
And the work would be front-loaded as well to develop the activities, to develop any rubrics for success, and to have it either posted or the availability to send home.
And some of that help would come after the fact too, because,
Right.
Again, it's hard to predict the weather, but, there would be a lot of different variables at play in terms of what kind of support is needed, during those 2 days and after.
Anybody else? Chris?
This is just a pilot, so do we expect at the state level, to set any parameters behind this? I mean, are there any parameters?
So when I spoke to them 2 weeks ago, at this point there were not, and they actually were encouraging districts to do it so they can start to have kind of a data set of what's working, what's not. Right now, a few districts tried it last year, and it was just kind of, there was no district did it more than one day. So it was really talking about, and it was wide variety from pure physical to pure online to 2 weeks till June 1st is another district you would read about. So they're encouraging it so they can have a little bit more parameters. So I think that's another reason to get on board in the early stages, to be part of that decision making for the state of this worked for us and here's how we have seen it, and roll it out and be part of creating those guidelines.
And these other districts are still in pilot, or are they implemented as policy?
No one has it as policy right now. It's the districts that are moving forward with this, just the practice of what they are doing. But it was, just to answer your question, approved by the school committees of each of those districts, because that's the final
We're
approval.
looking at it, yeah, basically a 2-day pilot,
Mhm.
and that approval would be, again, in November timeframe, just to be clear on that, okay.
So, and I know you're working through all the details, but and I think we talked about this briefly when this topic first came up last year. At what point we decide on what the assignments are? Like, is it a couple days before we know there's going to be a storm? Is it weeks
So
ahead of time?
right now, conceptually, and this is before getting feedback from the teachers more broadly, but we met with kind of a couple subsets of teachers. So this is, kind of limited sampling. But what we're thinking is, and again, this could change, so I don't want to nothing's written in stone. But we're thinking having grade level assignments at the elementary schools, or team based maybe at the upper elementary level, and then really keeping it to the individual teachers at the secondary level, because especially at the high school where there's so many courses, I think it's difficult to say that this is like the ninth. It may shift, but the current thinking is like grade level based assignments, so the expectations are kind of uniform at the elementary level, and then having course based assignments at the secondary level is the thinking right now. Online at the secondary level, like an actual Blizzard bag, or maybe we come up with some kind of Milford specific term for it. Craig had some interesting ideas.
The folder.
Yes.
But, at the middle school and secondary levels, the expectation would be that you're still rolling along with your curriculum in your class. Where in the elementary, it's going to be too hard to predict, I think, so it's going to be more of like I don't want to say a one-off, but it'll be connected.
Skills-based.
It'll be connected somehow, right? But it may not be like in a sequence during a unit.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, I guess this is might be my concern, is in terms of the 2 days, if we were going to do a pilot, my personal preference would be that we pilot it once, and that we take the feedback and only use a second day if we end up getting into a real bind. Like if we end up approaching June 28th, 29th, because there are some things that we're just never going to replicate. So if it's a lesson
100%.
experience, a musical experience, physical education, some specialized services. And I know, working in a school, I know the end of June isn't ideal for some of those things either. But I think if we can kind of hang on to as many days as we can, I guess I'd rather try it one day and then kind of take our data from that rather than automatically assuming the first two are going to go that route. But that's just my opinion. I think it's something to be explored.
So can I just respond to that? I think conceptually down the line, I think we're thinking like fifth or sixth day. The reason I propose 2 days, but I think one day would work too. I'm really not hung up on the 2 day versus 1 day.
Right.
Is I think if we do it once, I don't know if we'll get like I think the one time through some people might love it, some people might hate it, but if we have a second time through, we might have like a little bit more of a. That's really the thinking behind that. But I hear what you're saying too, because going slow sometimes makes sense.
Yeah, and I understand in the first year doing it earlier rather than later. I get that. So I think maybe it's something to talk about with the Teachers Association and the other groups that you're going to consult with.
Absolutely.
Although 2 in a row might be tough, right? So like, if it was 2 days, but it was 2 days in a row, you may want to take 1 day with this concept, and then the other day no, and then do a third day some other time.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because 2 days in a row we may not be prepared for.
Right.
And it won't impact how I approach like the snow day process, which is wildly popular with the children.
Not according to Twitter.
So I think we're going to take the same approach, is where we can get like a day in and it's safe, and I'm still going to be consulting with Lenmore Cohen with transportation, the DPW for roads, and in some cases police and fire, depending on what the weather situation is. So it really won't impact the overall decision. I won't say, hey, we've got 2 in the bank. It's really going to approach it like, if we can get school days in, is how I've always approached it. Like I want to do it because you can't replicate like a school day at home. The thinking behind this is really, it's productivity that we might not see later in the year, and ability for feedback as well from the teachers.
Who else? Mr. Wilson stole my question, so thank you. I have my answer, but no, thank you, MJ. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Mr. McIntyre.
All right, let me just pull this up. So in your packets are the proposed superintendent goals for this year. And I really want to kind of get a sense of, from the committee, are these goals appropriate, and what kind of format you'd like to see them in, are really my 2 questions, and any recommendations you have. So for the viewers at home, I'm going to just read the goals. I'm not going to read the bullets beneath the goals, just in the interest of time, but I would love your kind of feedback and input on this. So complete the final phase of the Blended Learning Initiative by deploying Chromebooks to Milford High School students in grades 10 through 12. Next is to complete the long-range education facilities plan. Goal 3 is the focus on math achievement and growth, which is a continuation of a 17-18 goal. Social emotional learning program implementation and expansion. family and community outreach, administrator professional development on high-impact strategies for student learning and growth are the 6 goals. And these are basically, coming out of our 3-year strategic plan as well. So they're aligned to that and our 4 strategic focus areas. So I don't know if you want to provide some thoughts, some feedback, some ideas, specifically about the format, because I'm happy to put it in any format the committee kind of deems they're comfortable in seeing it in.
Anybody have any questions? Chris,
So
I'm
just as
sorry.
far as whether or not we have just questions in regard to some of the details, is that, I mean.
I think you can ask, I think anything's on the table for a question.
Right, yeah, and I think that's some of the bigger things, like, I look at this and I understand, I guess, what the objective is. I guess maybe looking for a little bit more detail on certain topics. So for example, when you're in your goal 1, second topic about providing the teachers technology integration, just if we can elaborate a little bit more of I guess how that plan needs to come through for one of them. The 4th one down in that goal 1 is just, I guess, what are some of the common goals and
Are
how
you talking about the Chromebook?
I'm sorry, yeah, so for the 4th one down, the review of so we're still in goal 1.
Okay.
Review of the first year full deployment across the district and making recommendations for improvement in communications. I guess, are there common goals that you're looking for? I guess, how will that assessment look? I mean, maybe I'm getting into too much detail from my side of it, but I guess I was just looking at that.
All feedback is good feedback.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think, we could provide some timelines and what kind of I'm thinking there in
Yep.
a little more detail so you guys have a better understanding of that. No, that's good.
Yeah.
In the past, or at least I think when we write out the evaluation at the end, we see where these goals kind of fit into the rubric, kind of the template, and
Yep.
kind of the big 4 areas in the evaluation.
Yep.
I don't know if it would help, whether it's now or later, like if you plug it into that template at the end of the year for us, like I think you've done last year on a Google Doc.
Yep.
It's helpful to see like which indicators, I mean, I don't think you need to go through every bullet, but just to get a sense of
Mm-hmm.
some of the indicators and elements that these correspond to.
Mm-hmm.
Similar feedback. I agree with the overarching themes and goals that you've established here. The devil's always in the details, right? So the more detail we can get, the better. In particular with the long-range education facilities plan, and that detail will probably be included in the plan itself.
Right.
Right. So I know that the last bullet that you have here is gathering the feedback from the community in June of 2019. So with the next step, are we planning for fall of 2019 for town meeting? What's the next step after we get that feedback?
I think some of it's going to come from the feedback itself, because I think, this is engaging groups like the Finance Committee, as well as just the general public. So I think we'd have a basic plan at the end of the year, and that would be driven by some of the expectation timelines across the community. And like we saw with the Woodland project, that started in, what year was that, Craig? 99?
No,
93?
yeah,
1842?
98 or something. Yeah, it was 97, I think.
97. Okay. And it was in the 90s. I couldn't remember what year it was. So I think there's going to be some shifts to timeline. Like, realistically, there's going to be some shifts to timelines. I think we'll set like an ideal schedule. Like, some of the projects are driven by some of the big ticket items, like, the roof at the high school, for example.
Right.
Is a very big ticket item that we probably don't want to go too far outside of that, usable life. And we don't potentially want to replace it if we're doing a renovation or rebuild, if that's one of the options.
Yeah.
Is a good example of that.
Okay.
And touching on that Joe brought that up. I mean, to have this finalized by June, I personally would like to see it, if we could get it finalized before the town meeting in April, or was it May next year? If it all falls, I know timelines shift and everything like that, but I'd like to have this all like said and done and have it available for the community before the town meeting vote. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I
Just
think
my
it's
personal
something
opinion.
we can look to.
You know?
Yeah,
And
I
from a
think-
funding perspective, whether it's a fund a feasibility study or something else, that's probably gonna be the fall meeting.
Right.
But, yeah.
Even,
sort
even
of
if this
get
was like
wrapped
a
up. Right.
draft of some
Right.
sort, like, hey, this is what we've got, here you go, community people, take a look at it, you know, it's not finalized, but this is the steps that we're working on, and give us like till June to have it absolutely finalized. If we have some kind of a draft or something that we could present, give to the community, that'd be great.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jeff, I just had one thing, Kev.
Yep.
I know you talked about timelining some of these, or
Mhm.
all of these, putting
Yep.
a level of expectation behind it. Do you think it'd be possible maybe to just get a monthly update on where those are in queue or where they are in process? I mean, not all at once, but
What I've done in the past is I've kind of given like a mid-year update and then a kind of an end-of-the-year final one.
Okay.
I don't know if you want more regular updates on the goals. I just don't, like, that's my only question, is I don't know if you want to take,
So it's kind of like
meeting
a
time.
first, second half type thing?
yeah, so like, I'd probably do something in, like, say we approve these next month, because I think I can, based on the feedback, I think I can put it into a format that will
Okay.
work. I could probably do something in like December or January, just depending on where the meetings fall.
Yeah.
And then maybe like towards the end of the year, and if there's like milestones, like I think we will be talking about like the long-range facilities plan. We'll probably be talking about Chromebooks at some point.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's gonna come up naturally anyways. Like I know
Okay.
Lisa's gonna come in and talk about SEL. So I think there's gonna be other opportunities where you're gonna get a sense of it. But I'm happy to also, you know, provide like a monthly piece, whether I present to the full committee or not. I mean, that's something I can definitely do.
I don't know, I mean, I don't want to create unnecessary cycles, but, you know, if there's a way to get, you know, just a little more about, it doesn't have to be a huge detailed response, but maybe just some small updates on a monthly basis. Just more of a progress update. I don't know, unless the board feels that's unnecessary.
If it's doable.
Or committee.
What's that idea?
I'll
Let me
leave it
put
up.
that, let
We
me put
can-
that into the proposal. I'll put a couple options on the table.
Yeah,
and
throw it
see
out. Let's
where-
toss it out there.
where you
Like I
wanna- where you
said,
wanna go.
I
'Cause
know.
I'm just,
I don't want to take.
I don't think it's gonna be more work because it's things I'm doing on a regular basis. I just don't know. Like some of the things will be ripe for that because they'll be different like
Okay.
phases, and other things may or may not be. So maybe I'll give like maybe some updates at different points on the different goals when it's
Okay.
when it makes. I'll put that as an option.
All right.
Let me think it through a little bit because I'm thinking out
Thank you.
loud right now. and it's-
Okay. Thank you.
It's not super awesome.
Well, one thing I was going to suggest, Joe, is that okay?
No, that's fine.
I don't know if there's a way to outline on the agenda, when we get the agenda, that some of the topics that are being presented are connected to some of the goal areas. So I would imagine that
Oh, yeah.
we might have some
Mm.
conversation about math this year, if that's going to be a
Yep.
focus area academically, which this points to. So if some of the CTLs come, or department heads, maybe we can just kind of have it identified that this is kind of a presentation, but also a goal area contact also. I don't know if that's, would be the level that you're looking for, but it seems to me
Sure,
like every month there's gonna be something.
Yeah,
That will be-
and that's what I mean. I didn't want to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel or add additional cycles to
Yeah.
what take them away from
Yeah.
actually educating or, you know, driving the educational process. But thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good suggestion.
Megan?
So Kevin, I think my gut reaction is that all of these things I think are very important, and so I think you're highlighting the right things. I guess I'd like to see a little bit more emphasis on the actual goal. Like, for example, family and community outreach, to me that's a statement, it's not really a goal. What is our goal? And the same would be true for the technology piece, complete the final phase of blending learning by deploying Chromebooks. We believe as a school that the technology piece is so important, handing them out to me is not what we think the goal is.
Correct.
And so I think we want to highlight those critical things that we're working on.
Yeah.
I don't think this document does that. And so
Okay.
I think to give yourself credit for all the great things that are happening and that will happen, I'd like to see the goal statements be more comprehensive of what they actually intend to do. It's also really important to me, and it's perhaps just because I struggled with some of the assessment piece, I need to see some more of the measures of evidence in terms of what are we actually going to provide to say that we accomplished, like what does success look like for some of these things. And I certainly don't want the time it takes you to do that to outweigh like the more important things you need to work on, but I'd like to see some things put on paper in terms of what does success look like and what will we be provided.
Yep.
And especially important to me would be some staff surveys. So in goals where that would be relevant, I'd love to get some staff and administrator feedback in certain areas. I think that would be really helpful for us as a committee as we start to think about the evaluation process.
Joe, you have something?
Yeah, just a couple things under family and community outreach, and it's really, I'm not sure if it's necessarily goal-related or just an action item, but one of the and I think we've talked about this in the past, from a communication perspective, one of the most impactful things that we can do is have those one-to-one interactions between the teacher and the families, right? And so how do we improve upon that, and how do we increase the amount of conversations that are occurring between families and teachers, whether it's a one-to-one interaction or maybe leveraging the technology to provide immediate feedback to families about how a child's doing in class on a particular test, or maybe they're noticing some behavioral changes,
Yep.
whatever it may be. I feel like that's lacking today in some cases. So is there a way that we can improve upon that? And then the other sort of action item related to the family and community outreach, we do a great job hosting these forums, and unfortunately nobody ever shows up to these things, right? So
It's usually a little better than nobody.
but it's really important information. It's information that we want to share with the
Yeah.
community, and that the community should have available at their fingertips. So I think we need to do a better job posting that information out on the website, so that families that can't make it, or maybe at that time the information isn't relevant to them, but it becomes relevant to them 6 months down the road. So to be able to go to the website and easily pull down the information, I think would be beneficial.
Great.
Just when Joe was saying that, it brought up another thought, Kevin, and I know Craig's going to talk in a little bit about the accountability. I'd love to see something in that goal specifically around absenteeism and how we're working with families to address it, because I think unfortunately that penalized us in ways it didn't need to. And so if there's anything we can do to improve absenteeism, I think that would be a great spot for that. The other thing that came up, we were at Stacy the other night, is I feel like any additional attention we can give parents to the technology, be it Aspen or Google Docs or Calendar, any sort of video tutorials that could exist for parents to be able to leverage. I think it fits, it's kind of a knit that fits in many of these places, but it's just something that came to mind. I think if we showed our parents how much is accessible to them, it'd be something that everyone would benefit from. And the kids could do the videos and, post them, because I know, like you said, Joe, it's hard to get people to come at night, but if it was something you could always go and view, it might be something that was helpful.
Yep, that's great.
That's a good idea.
Just a few more then.
Pile it on,
Go
baby.
through exactly. So I know one of the things that I heard back in the 2 open houses at Stacy in high school was the rollout of the Chromebooks, and they were 95% rolled out. There was still certain students that hadn't returned their paperwork, so it held up being able to implement the education process with a Chromebook. I don't have the answer, but is there a way of trying to make it a little bit better deployment? Is there a
that
method
speaks
to
to that.
try to work through and try to help students that are having a hard time getting the proper paperwork back in, so they can get their Chromebooks in a timely fashion, and the teachers can roll out their lesson plans in a timely fashion?
And that speaks to that fourth bullet. Like,
Okay.
that's precisely
Yeah.
what we're looking to do, because anytime you do anything new, you're gonna have expected and unexpected issues.
Right. Yep.
And I think one of the things we're going to do as a team, both at the building level and the technology level, is really look at, because ideally, really look at like all aspects of the rollout, from initial communication to what are the barriers to get paperwork, whether it's online, what are people not understanding about the process, and how can we get. I don't think we're ever going to get 100%, because there's always going to be, like just like when we do permission slips on a field trip, there's a kid the day before who runs in with the field the field trip permission form. But how can we get like a reasonable number of like 97, 98, 99%, where the vast majority of students have devices in hand? I would say this year we're ahead of the schedule from last year. Ideally, I'd like to get them out either prior to school starting or during those first like 2 or 3 days. So when we hit that first, that's usually not a first full week, but the following week after Labor Day, that everybody can kind of hit the ground running with the devices. What the deployment did show us this year is that we have the very good problem of that the teachers want to use the technology to support the learning, and not having 75% of the kids in the classroom is a barrier to really doing that effectively in terms of work at home, which is the whole point of taking them home at the secondary level. We don't see it with them because of I don't want to say just, but they're there during the day. So it's a point well taken, and something we're wrestling with.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's an issue.
In regards to goal 3 and goal 4, obviously one's math based, the other is SEL based, which are obviously important. Are there other I guess, focuses too that need to be added on to, into any of these goals? Or is it just because we're specifically, right now, we feel like math and SEL are two, distinct points that we need to really work on within our school district?
Yeah, so typically, like, through the evaluation process, you do, like, traditionally you do two goals. You do I'm going to blank on these. What are the two areas? It's
The student performance.
student performance and a professional practice
Professional
goal.
practice.
What I like to do from a superintendent's perspective is I like to hit on like a broader area of bigger things. And if you look at our 30, I think 5 or 6 page strategic plan,
Right.
there's probably 100 indicators in there
Right,
that we're all
exactly.
working on and they're important. I think the goal of this document is really to kind of highlight, 5, 6, 7, give or take. I
Right.
mean, you can make an argument. People in the English department would say, why isn't there an English school? People in the music department would say,
Right.
why aren't we focusing more
Yeah.
on the expansion of the music program? I picked math specifically because I think, the data the last few years is our math achievement and growth across the board is kind of trailing our ELA. And there's a number of kind of reasons for that, but I think that's why the focus area is. We haven't kind of come up with the silver bullet's the wrong term, but at each level I think there's some work that needs to be done to get us to where we really want
Right.
to be.
Yep.
And that's why I put it as a goal. It doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm forgetting about science, ELA,
Right.
history. It's just that I figure it's worth highlighting. 'cause
Right,
it's
yeah, I
something
mean,
we're
your
talking
first
about.
bullet point, it describes how closing the gap, and it kind of gives the information that I can understand where we're targeting, so, it's good. I like to see that.
Yeah, so again, I don't think, that doesn't mean math is more important, it's just
Right.
math is a focus area for this
Yep.
particular year, and it's a continuation of last year's goal, because I think in some areas we saw some, and Craig's gonna speak to this, we saw some, forward movement, in some places we saw a little backward movement, it was a little mixed.
Yep. Yep.
And it could be a goal in 1920 as well,
Okay.
potentially.
Excellent. I got one more. Just from the high school side of it, vocational programs, I know we've continued to grow vocational programs. I don't know if do we want that part of as your goals, I mean, look at it that,
Yeah, I would say that's very important, and I
Yeah.
think it's part of the strategic plan,
Yep.
and I think it's a focus of the high school.
Right.
I think it could very easily add it, because I think we're looking at a lot of areas
Right.
where we're expanding, but again, I think if the committee felt strongly about me putting the college and career readiness as a goal, I think that would happily fit in to the other goals that are on there. It's just kind of the flavor of the committee. I'd be happy to do that, because it's something I'm gonna be working on with Josh and his team, and I know a
Right.
number of the committee members have also engaged in that work too, to support, some internship program development and some
Right.
experiential learning, opportunities for kids.
Yes. Myself personally, I'd like to see it, just because, again, I feel that, Milford High School is kind of, we're developing not into, from the educational facility to different avenues beyond graduation. And those vocational programs are definitely offering different avenues for our students. So is it? I guess, can you note it that for me personally, I would like to be able to see how, what programs we currently have, how they're doing as far as, working with the current student population, and what other programs we hope to implement in the future.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. Are you guys good with that? I'm happy to add it, because it's something we're doing, and it's important.
Or, or does it fall in? So.
Yeah, no, I think it falls into it. I mean, it's also an out.
Oh.
I'm happy to add it.
So, I mean,
It's something that's-
we heard about going out to Dell and the
Mhm.
I forget the program that
Business
Josh was
banking.
in,
Business
business
banking.
banking, but it seemed, the excitement that Josh showed, and, the amount of input or feedback he was able to provide for us tonight, and it's only, 3 weeks into school.
Yep.
I think would be great to hear, towards the end of the school year, when they've got an entire school year's worth of knowledge, to put
Yep.
forth.
Yeah, I can add that. That's actually a good one, and something that I would say, Josh Otland and myself speak about probably
Right.
once or twice a week.
Yep, good.
I didn't know if it would fit into goal 6, whether it needs to be a separate goal or not, but if you're talking about high impact strategies for student learning and growth, I don't know if there's a way to rework the last goal area to include some of the more traditional, maybe teaching strategies that you're focusing on, with looking at other ways that you can have high impact instruction that may not necessarily be in a classroom here, I don't know, I mean, it's probably just as well, maybe it stands separately on its own, but I was thinking about a way that maybe the last goal could be reworked to include multiple pathways for strategies that are impactful.
So why don't I look at either adding that particular goal or working it in? Because again, it's not adding work in a sense, but
Yeah.
it's work we're doing on a regular basis, and it's just really reporting it to the committee.
Right.
And it's important work.
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
So each of the principals have their own set of goals, right?
Correct.
For the year.
Correct.
Could it be possible to share that with us as well? And I'm sure they're all tied together and they all.
Yeah. Let me see, because I'm not sure if that's part of like the personnel process.
Oh, okay.
Let me check on that. I'm just not sure the answer to that question.
And I only ask specifically because I know Josh has some pretty lofty goals for
Yep.
this year, and I believe one of the goals was looking at the high school schedule.
Yep.
If I recall, I think we were looking at the block structure versus the traditional.
Well, no, it's more making some shifts to the current schedule than it is kind of a complete and it's not going to be the big kind of shift we went from block back to traditional. It's more shifting within the current structure.
Okay. To be able to provide.
So that would
more
be part of
time.
a school improvement plan now. So that's a school improvement plan goal. So I could reshare those out. I don't know if I can give the individual goals because I'm not sure with principals.
Right,
With
okay.
teachers I know I can't, but with principals I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Just maybe on that note, Kevin, again, it's a small item, but maybe just something that specifically talks about how we're going to align all the school improvement plans and make them consistent across the district. And also really ask the principals when they come back with their council's proposal to update us on the prior year. I'd like to see that actually embedded in the document so we can kind of see the progress that's being made year over year, just while you're taking recommendations.
Anybody else want to beat them up? Some more questions?
No, these are all good things. Except for Lagor's.
His or mine?
Both.
Thank you, Kevin. Great work.
Thank
All right, thank you guys.
Next, you got the out-of-state travel.
Yes. So we're in the process of updating the travel policy. While we're doing that, though, life is going on in the Milford Public Schools. And the Milford High School Music Department, I've got a copy of it right here, so I'm going to pass this out as well, just in case you don't have it right in front of you. Here you go, Chris.
Thank you.
So they traditionally do a trip that is like an experiential trip for the kind of the bands and the choruses at the high school level. I believe they went to, and now I'm getting the years confused, but within the last couple of years they've been to Nashville, New York, they've been to Toronto, they've been to a few other cities, and the request this year is a trip to Disney March 21 through the 25th. And that is 3 school days and covers a weekend as well. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it to the committee tonight and requesting the committee consider it before we wrap up the approval process of the travel policy, which we're probably a few meetings away from that, is there's a fundraising component. There's actually booking the trip because it's a rather large group that goes on the trip. And if we delay the ability to catch, better prices and make sure you get the flights you want and the accommodations you want, the likelihood dissipates over time. And that's the only reason I'm bringing it now before we complete the travel policy. And I don't know if anybody wants to comment who was in the subcommittee about where we are in that process, just what we discussed today. But I think we're pretty close. There's a couple areas where we're kind of tweaking, but this trip wouldn't be in violation of the proposed policy if the committee accepts it. And it's not one of the areas that's really under discussion. It's more procedural type things that we want to make sure we're kind of in line with.
Anybody have any questions?
No, I'd be supportive.
I'd be supportive in this too, Kevin. Like I remember I've talked to you before on
Yep.
this. I'd really, maybe we could just push this to the top of getting this approved before these guys even leave. I'd be happy with that. I mean, the policy. I apologize.
So I think the policy will be approved before they leave.
Okay.
I think The issue is, I would recommend it, or request/recommend a vote tonight, just so they can kind of start like the
Right.
fundraising machine kind of in.
Yeah, as long as it's, it's approved and the policy is corrected to make
I would
these
guess,
guys.
it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking like November, we should have the policy for a first reading.
But based upon my understanding, it would be it would be aligned with both the current and the future. It's not in accordance with the existing policy. Jen, do you agree with that?
Yes, and I think
Okay.
we're very close on it. I think it's just tweaking some of the
Okay.
practices, differentiating between if there are things that are happening, international trips versus domestic trips, trips for a week, trips for a day,
Okay.
trying to kind of tease all that out. But I think it's very close to being read by the committee.
That being said, I'll make a motion to approve this field trip.
Just a
I'm
couple
sorry, Chris,
questions.
go ahead.
Sorry
I'm
about
sorry.
that. No, it just, with it all, I think some of my questions when I originally saw this on the agenda, just that, just knowing that it is truly tied with academics.
Yep.
I think it's important that we state that out there. We do have, the music director went through and specifically said, what the different goals were of this trip. Also that I don't believe any school funds were going to be used on this trip, that it's going to be all self-funded by the music department. There might be some other out-of-state requests by the music department. Typically they have other events. So even though this is their big event, they may still go to Rhode Island or up to New Hampshire, which
Right.
is more bus trip driven. But I think it's, again, important to go over some of that, that, what was the, would it be considered an excused absence or an unexcused
Excused
absence?
absence.
On that, so
Yep.
obviously we do have a threshold for absences, so I just want
It would
to,
really kind of
Make
count as a
sure.
school day because they're engaged in a
Right.
school activity.
Yep.
I would say this is kind of an annual trip, and sometimes they skip a year for a variety of reasons, but they've traveled to probably, I'd say a dozen, maybe not that high, but 6 or 7 different cities where they have like like a Nashville experience where they would go through into some of the recording studios. They've done that in the past. They've been to New York, I think Toronto, a couple other places where a similar kind of thing. They'll work with professional musicians. There's some kind of like performance kind of similar to this where they're doing some kind of competition where they receive some feedback from professional musicians, and then they get a sense of like, and that's the kind of vocational aspect too, because they get a sense of, what is a working musician at like, Disney or, in the Nashville music scene or wherever they go, kind of like, what does that look like day to day? And it's kind of eye-opening for a lot of the kids who are thinking about becoming music majors, because some of the successes and struggles are all very instructive.
so I think it would be important too, to just have a presentation by that group when they come back.
Yeah,
just to
absolutely.
show what
They'd
they've
be
learned
they'd be thrilled
and
to
their
come.
interaction. So
Yeah, they'd be
certainly
thrilled to come.
be great for us as a community to
Yeah.
actually see. That way when you hear about these things in the future, the decision's even that much easier to make.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And I know Nadine and her crew would be thrilled to come in and share the experience and probably put a slideshow of
Yeah,
pictures
right.
up there
Yeah.
that you'll be worried you made that request.
Yeah, it's not PowerPoint, we're all set.
Exactly.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Joey, just another quick
I'm
question.
sorry.
And this
I'm not
isn't-
trying to move on. I'm
I know.
sorry, I'm not paying attention.
And this question isn't specific to this trip, but I guess it could apply to some of the international trips as well. Is there language in the policy that talks about making up missed work while you're away? Whether it's this trip or international trip?
I don't remember if we.
The policy, I don't think we have anything in there that I recall. Obviously, the way that the music director wrote this proposal up is that all missed work would have to be made up by each individual student within here, so.
Yeah, but is there like a protocol that teachers follow when we have these types of trips, so it's consistent?
Yeah, I think that's something we could probably, and I don't know if it needs to happen at the policy level or it could happen at the handbook level. And that's up to what the committee's kind of pleasure is. But let me see if there's any language in the handbook, because I'm not sure. And I don't remember seeing it in the policy
Yeah, I didn't see
tonight,
it.
but I don't know if it appears in another policy. I can't say for certain
Yeah.
about like absences. Like I know we have like an absence policy and we have, and again, I get confused whether it's a policy or a handbook, like we have college visits at the high school level, for example. There's a certain number of days you can miss for college visits. Let me check that, Joe, because I don't have an answer for you tonight.
And the days could add up, right? Because you could have student that's in band that's going to Italy and going on college trips, and they could be missing 10, 12 days.
Absolutely, and I think that's something we have to take into account is like more of these kind of, you know, smaller, this is a larger group experience, but some of the smaller group experiences are popping up, because I think there's interest in maybe doing a trip to Portugal as well. From a cost perspective, I don't think there's a lot of kids that do multiple trips, but I think there's been a couple that have done more than one.
But it was a good point, and probably, it definitely, if we're gonna go with handbooks, I think it should be referenced in the policy to refer it back to school handbooks.
Yeah, and the reason I'm being kind of vague is I'm just not sure the answer to it.
Yeah.
And I'd have to check, because it could be, I know I've seen language around that, not connected to specific days, necessarily like you have X number of days to make up an assignment, but I think there's something in there about absences due to trips or college visits and how that kind of plays out, but I'm not sure if it's a handbook or a policy.
All set?
All set.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this field trip.
Oh, wait a second. I'll second it.
Seconded by Joe, all in favor? All right. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
Next on the agenda, Craig, you're up.
Thank you, sir.
Craig, Kathy. whatever
Well,
the funds-
I'm gonna recommend we do the warrants first, and then while you're reading gifts, I could be setting up over there. All right, so we have 9 warrants for your approval tonight. First warrant in the amount of $129,121.77.
Motion to approve the warrant, motion by Jim, seconded by Megan, all in favor?
Second warrant in the amount of $280,514.80.
Yeah, motion by Jen, seconded by Chris, all in favor?
Third warrant in the amount of $25,106.45.
Yeah, motion by Chris, seconded by Jim, all in favor?
Next warrant in the amount of $24,389.26.
Get a motion by Megan, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Fifth warrant in the amount of $17,859.24.
Motion by Jen, seconded by Jim, all in favor?
Sixth warrant in the amount of $2,374.10.
Motion by Jen, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Seventh warrant in the amount of $199,528.19.
Motion by Jen, seconded by Megan, all in favor?
Eighth warrant in the amount of $4,669.19.
Motion by Megan, seconded by Jen, all in favor?
And finally, ninth warrant in the amount of $2,916.12.
Motion by Chris, seconded by Jim, all in favor?
And you do have some gifts to put in, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Consigli sets up to, I'll read off all the gifts and we'll vote on them afterwards. First gift is from Harold and Marshall Rhodes, supplies for applied physics in the amount of $1,000. I have another one here for Emmanuel Gasgraz and Astrid Pengera, sorry if I messed that up, for the School Family Network in the amount of $25. And I have 2 from the same donor, Linda Schulman Innovation Fund. One in the amount of $1,000 for the Listening Lab for English learners. And the next one in the amount of $400 for ViewMaster Virtual Reality for building EL schemes. I get a motion to accept these gifts.
Motion?
Motion by Chris, seconded by Megan. All in favor? Very generous of the people. Thank you very much. I'm done, Craig.
The portal's up too, Greg.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Hold on. I'm not seeing that, so hold on one second.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like my whole.
And
See, I'm not seeing that. Okay. All right. So, before I start, I just want to say this is a new system, and I've been through this. This is my first time going through this with everybody, so be patient with me. I've been through it with multiple assistant superintendent groups. I've been through it with some teachers, and we're all still trying to really get a handle on what this information is telling us. So I'm going to do the best that I can. If you have questions, I'm going to do the best I can to answer them. If I can't get an answer, we have a meeting next week, so I'll bring it back next week, okay? We are about a month ahead of schedule. Usually we're doing our MCAS presentation sometime towards the end of October, but today they released the data, so I felt like it was important that we at least gave you guys some information and knew what you were looking at. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions from people in the town, so we'll do the best we can. All right, so first thing I wanted to talk about was some of the different changes that you'll see when you look at our new accountability system. So before, really we were looking at growth scores, we're looking at achievement scores. Now we're looking at a few different things. We are still looking at performance, but we're looking at different opportunities beyond test scores. We're looking at attendance data. We're also looking at not only the aggregate with all of the kids, but we're also looking at trying to close that achievement gap. So we're looking at the bottom 25% also, and how we did with those kids as well, which is really a different feature this year. One of the biggest things is the discontinuation of the accountability and assistant level. So there are no more level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So that's gone away, and it's been replaced with categories, which we'll go over in a little bit. And then the other thing is the district is no longer classified by its lowest performing school. They take the district as a whole. So in the past, your whole district was categorized based on your lowest performing school, and that was it. Now it's the district as a whole. All right? We'll get into more detail though. All right, so there is a difference between what you're looking at when you're looking at Stacy and Woodland versus what you're looking at with the high school. So these are the accountability indicators for grades 3 to 8. So you're looking at achievement data, which is English and math, their average scale score. And then we're also looking at science achievement in grades 5 and grades 8. And those are on the legacy MCAS, so you're looking at CPI with that. Student growth percentile, you're looking at language arts, and you're looking at math. And there's a change in our SGP this year. We're looking at a mean score rather than a median score. So they've done some research and determined that the mean score actually is a better indicator of the aggregate. They've also added in the English language proficiency, and that really is the progress that students are making towards English language proficiency within 6 years. So it puts kids on a path, and what's our progress with that? And then finally, chronic absenteeism is also a measure. And that's chronic absenteeism is defined by students missing 10% of their membership. So for a kid that's in school, that's been enrolled since the beginning of the year, that's 18 days. Anything over 18 days, you're determined as being chronically absent. If you've been in only enrolled in school for 50 days, it's 10% of that. All right? Make sense? And that's excused or unexcused. So we were just having the conversation about field trips. So I would agree with Dr. McIntyre that those are not absences at all. They're days that kids are in school doing school activities. So we just have to be careful with how we mark different days. Otherwise, we're gonna get the chronic absenteeism label. So it is something that we're looking at as a district in each of the different schools about how they are marking kids. And I think we were talking about looking at when kids make those college trips, what are we saying about those? Are those absences? Are those school-sponsored activities? I don't know. So, looking at that. Any questions about the indicators for 3 to 8?
Yeah, Craig, I have one.
Oh.
The English language proficiency,
Yeah.
is it a test that they're using to measure
Yeah,
that?
that's a good question. They're using access testing.
Okay.
So all of our EL students take access testing a little before the MCAS. It's like late winter, like January and February.
And is that the same starting in grade 3?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's listening, speaking,
Got it.
writing.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
It's
Reading.
probably a silly question, but
Probably not.
any percentage of that access testing electronic, or how is it administered?
It's online now. Last year we went online.
Yeah,
I
that's
was just
right.
curious.
So that's right. Before it was we're actually speaking to a teacher, and the teacher was marking it down. Now it's more online and doing it that way. So I think
Okay.
before you were getting maybe some different scores between teachers.
It's a lot more time intensive though than the MCAS tests are.
Yeah.
Just because it's not the full class ratios you get for MCAS. There's
Do we leverage the
there's a lot
Chrome?
to it, though.
Are we leveraging the Chromebook in that process as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, so high school has some additional measures that they're looking at. Besides all the ones that we mentioned, there's the 4-year cohort graduation rate, so just the graduation rate of the 4 years of those kids. The extended engagement rate, which the way I understand what the extended engagement rate is it's that group of students, so you had a 4-year group, but then you might have had kids that took 5 years to graduate. So how many of those kids stayed with the school and actually graduated 5, maybe 6 years down the road? Okay?
Craig, how do they get that information?
It's tied to a SACID. So every kid has their own ID number. It's tied to that. But the kids are still enrolled in Milford High School too. So it's from when the cohort starts in grade 9 and until they either graduate or unfortunately drop out.
Okay.
Craig, is there any weighting that comes into play there?
Yeah,
So-
yeah, we'll go over that.
Okay.
It's that's actually the next slide. Let's see, what else? Oh, the final indicator, dropout rate, and then at the bottom you'll see under additional indicators, the percentage of 11th and 12th graders that complete some advanced coursework, like AP classes or the dual enrollment classes. And there's a list of classes that DESE put out. All right, so here's the weighted scale, Joe, to answer your question. If you notice, and it's a little different at the high school, but it's kind of a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of achievement and growth, which, I don't know, for better or worse, I don't know why they don't put more stock into growth than achievement, but it's 60% achievement, 20% growth, and then 10% on the other two indicators. And then at the high school, it's actually 2-to-1 on achievement and growth, and then they put 20% into the high school completion, 10% in proficiency in English language, and then the other indicators. Obviously, with a kind of that left column, not the no EL, with a with EL column, all the way to the right.
What's interesting there is the weightings are based on whether it's ELL or not ELL, so they're not taking special ed into consideration, the weightings.
Say that again?
So it's either ELL or no ELL, they're
Yeah.
not really factoring in special ed.
No, it's just ELL and no ELL, because if you see, they have to replace that 10% with the ELL, and so they put it up at the top.
And the other piece, Joe, is everybody has students with special needs in their districts.
Okay.
So ELL, some districts don't have enough that would count for, what's the threshold now, Craig?
20 students.
Yeah, so they might not have 20 students in a grade, so they would fall in the no ELL category.
And the graduation's the same weighting, whether you're ELL or not ELL.
Mhm.
And curious to know what percentage of the kids are graduating after 4 years, whether it's 5 or 6 or
Well, I think we
whatever,
can,
or ELL.
we'll look later, but I think we can kind of dig into that a little bit. Because they do put it up by subgroups. So I think we can see that indicator as a subgroup. Okay, so setting targets this year, this is very important, in my opinion, to just remember. This is based on 1 year. So we're looking at last year's kids versus this year's kids. And we're seeing whether they declined or improved from last year's kids. It's not a cohort, it's just based on 2 different kids, all right? And I think that's very important to understand. We're not really looking at where this group was last year. It's really just comparing the 8th grade kids to that last year to the 8th grade kids this year. The growth score is for the individual kids. That's a little different. That does take, that does factor this group versus this group this year versus this group last year. But all of the other measures are based on 1 year to the next. All right? That's this year. They say in the future it's going to be based on multiple years. How many years? I don't know. But I'm guessing the next year it'll be based on, they're going to set targets based on the previous 2 years and so on and so forth, but I don't know how long that'll go. Yeah, right, so that's setting targets. So when we look at the data, there's going to be certain points assigned, the accountability data. When we look at it, you'll get a 0 if the data has declined. So when they looked at, say, graduation rate from 2017 group to 2018 group, if this was 92% and this was 91%, we're going to get a 0 on that because it showed a decline. If there was no change, so the numbers were basically the same, you'll get 1 point. If it improved, but it didn't reach that target that the state set, so say, again, let's use that other example, it was 92, but the state said that you should grow to 95, and we only got to 93, we'll get the 2 points for improving. If you meet the target, you get the 3, and then if you actually exceed, you're getting a 4. Okay? All right. All right, so this is the different categories that schools could be labeled as. Our district was, in all of our schools are labeled as partially meeting targets. Actually, no, sorry, one of our schools is meeting targets that fell between the 75 and 100, that was Woodland. So, but Stacy in the high school fell with between 0 and 74, or partially meeting targets, and our district fell there as well. So we're labeled as schools without required assistance or intervention, and as you can see, a great number of schools fall into that category. Some schools, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, are also recognized as schools of recognition for different reasons. And then, of course, on the other end, there's a number of schools that do require assistance or intervention for a number of different reasons, and the reasons are up there. All right, I think we talked about this. Just categorizing schools, we went over that.
Can you talk about the districts aren't, that's kind of an important difference from the past.
I can't go back, hold on.
Alright.
Which one?
District accountability percentiles will not be calculated, so they're just doing it for schools.
Right. So yeah, when I'll show you when we get to the actual report. It'll just be totally blank. So before it put it into a percentile, and what do people do with those percentiles? They ranked them, right? That's how they rank schools. I noticed though, in newspapers, they're just pulling schools out and trying to rank them that way, and it's really not intended for that. I think the state has said it over and over again. Is not this system is not intended to take one school and look at another school with it. It's really based on what's your target at your school, and how did you achieve based on your own target. So I guess when we see it, it makes sense, but when you're thinking about it, you're saying, well, why can't I just take this school and rank it against that one? It's really not that simple, because everybody's at their own achievement level. So say town X is at, I don't know, let's give it a 500, and town Y is at a 400. Obviously, where they are in their own achievement, town Y could show these huge improvements and end up with a better number than town X, but the reality is town X is performing better, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's kind of a long way around it. All right, so I just wanted to put this slide up. This is what I've been to 2 webinars also trying to figure this out, and they stress this over and over again. These are 2 things that should not be done with this system, and I think I mentioned it already. But you shouldn't compare the data this year to historical data. It's not the same data. It's 2 different things. There's additional indicators this year. There's fewer years of data, and it's 2 totally different comparison groups. But we all know people are going to do that. We shouldn't equate the accountability categories historically and assistance levels historically with how they are done this year. They're 2 totally separate things, and they mean 2 totally different things. So I just wanted to be sure we did that. All right. I think I've been over these, but basically, I think you're going to see that a lot of different areas in ELA were either exceeding targets or meeting targets. In math, I think overall we're at no change. However, there are definitely areas that we've declined. And again, that's 2017 kids versus 2018 kids. Math continues to be an area of, I think, an area we need to focus more, because I still am not able to figure out why it is that we're performing so much better in language arts than we are in math. And I don't know, it's frustrating. And I'm sure teachers are frustrated with it too, because it's not for a lack of trying. So I think we just have to get in a room and get our assessments together, get our progress monitoring tools together, and look at them together and make sure that we're all on the same page, grade level wise, and then go from there.
Craig, one question. When talking about math, are there ways to score yourself throughout the year to find out if you're reaching that goal of what you guys talked about?
Yeah, so we're looking at different progress monitoring tools, like iReady, for example, is a program that you're going to see. I think when Woodland comes in to talk to you, they'll talk to you about that. But that's certainly the idea, that in each grade level, we should have progress monitoring tools that everybody's using, and then we're coming together and we're looking at the data. You know, I think when you look at the high school, for example, what they did with language arts, they brought in writing with colors, which everybody's heard about. But I think more importantly than just a program or teaching kids a way to write is the way that the whole department came together around this goal. And you know, they had professional development on it, they had coaching on it, they looked at each other's work and made sure that all the kids were in the same places. It's a great model for where we should be all the way across the district and all the different content areas. However, you know, obviously our #1 priority is teaching kids. Where do you find the time to be able to do that? You know, it's okay we can do it in one department or another, but we can't do it for everybody all the time, because we got to be in front of kids teaching. So, yes, the long and short of it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I was just wondering, that would be something that would be like, you know, by term or semester that you would check it, or would it be like, just curiosity?
By term or by, well, I would say twice, at least twice a semester, term, right? So we're trimesters, so you would probably do it every 6 weeks or so. Let's see if this works.
Thank you.
You seeing? No, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. There it goes. Okay. Like I said, the data actually changed a little bit from yesterday to today. When as of yesterday was preliminary data. Today was the real data, I guess. Changed a little in our favor. Not much, but a little. All right, so when you look at this, where to start? We'll see. Here's the accountability percentile. That, again, like I told you, is going to be blank. At the school level, you'll see the percentile. 39% partially meeting targets. So 39% comes when you look at this giant chart. If you remember all the different things that we talked about, it's all laid out right here. So you have your achievement, 2 points. I think you guys have a handout in front of you. Looks like this. Just for your reference, if you go to page, I think 5 of 9, the chart is right here. So if you're really stuck and curious on what the numbers mean, again, 0 declined, 1 no change, 2 improved, 3 met, 4 exceeded. So this is, again, this is district-wide. We'll go into schools in a second. And this is the overall view. So let's drill it down a little bit into detailed data. All right. So this top one is non-high school. So this is data for Woodland and Stacy. Meeting target. That number is 500. So 500. If kids scored a 500 on the test, it means they met the target. So you can see we're just below that. And there's our ranking with all groups. Improved below, so we're at a 2. And then it goes all the way down into all the different subgroups. Again, that first one's language arts. Here's language arts, high school. There's our achievement, which I think is fantastic. 97% of our kids are passing the test. Our target was 99.4. We got no change. We were, about
I'm
the
sorry
same.
if you explain this. Is the 2018 target, that's unique to Milford, and that's
Yes.
a certain percentage over last year?
Yeah,
Is that
exactly,
how it's calculated? Okay,
exactly.
thanks.
So they looked at the 2017 data and came up with a target for 2018, and that's what they're determining our achievement on. Okay? And it varies depending on how well you did or how well the 2017 kids did. So,
And if I can jump in right here, for ELA at the high school, they did exceptionally well in 2017. So though there was a slight decline, the achievement is still very high. We didn't meet there was no change, but we met the target. Do you have a question, Jim?
Yeah, that's a quick question. So is it fair to compare year over year, but not to be used as comparative data to other districts? Is
it fair? I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that we're talking about 2 totally different groups of kids, and we don't know based on this.
So is year over year fair, but used as comparative data, not generally a good idea?
Well, I think maybe if you had more than just 1 year that you were setting targets to,
Yeah.
I think it would be fair. But if setting a target based on 1 year worth of data,
Well,
I-
yeah, so I agree, but if you were to build a trend,
Yep.
could you look at a 3 to 5
Yeah,
year?
I think that might be fair, but it wasn't done in this, so.
No, right.
And that's,
okay.
that's the tricky thing too, Jim, is because like you get the example of like, you have a group of students that just, like a grade level that performs like
Really well.
is an aberration
Yeah.
high, and you put that next to maybe a grade level that, just over as a group was aberrationally low.
Yeah.
So one year you're gonna look like you've made tremendous improvement,
Right.
and the next
So-
year you're gonna look like you've dipped a lot. So to draw like, to Craig's point, to draw like overwhelming conclusions on 2 years of data is not,
Right.
it's just not the best practice.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Craig, can you just,
Where, you wanna go
quick
up?
question, no, right there, just quick question on the subgroups. So if I look at, the white subgroup, as
Yep.
an example, is that exclusive of the other subgroups? Or, for example, could that include an economically disadvantaged?
It could,
student in that
absolutely,
number?
yeah. So,
Okay.
that's a good question. So your high needs, right? Your high needs includes economically disadvantaged, EL students, students with disabilities. I think that's it, right? Those three categories?
Yeah, and
However-
the CP, can I jump in real
Yeah.
quick? The CPI is basically get 100 points, and this is based on the old, because the high school is the one place that's still taking the old MCAS, and that's gonna shift this year. It's 100 points if you're proficient or advanced, 75 for needs improvement, it kinda goes down from there per student. They take all that in aggregate, and so our number was for, like, let's go look at the white students, what was it? 98.2, so
Yeah.
that means the vast majority of students, which is true of the data, is falling in the advanced or proficient category.
Well,
So
exceeded
if
the
I wanted to
target.
know how my non-high need students were doing, I can't easily get that information from looking at this data.
They used to provide that, it's
yeah,
not in this
no.
chart right now. Years
No.
ago, they did provide that, it may appear somewhere else. That's possible. And we can probably pull that out.
Yeah, I'd have to look for that. Non-high needs kids. Okay.
I think we can pull that out as a data point, we just have to kind of play with the data a little bit.
Yeah.
But like to Joe's point too, if I wanted to see what the impact was for economically disadvantaged, I can't segregate that either, right? Because it's lumped into one
No,
category.
that's right.
That
But
you can
this-
see.
Is it, can you see it specifically, but it's,
It's right here.
is it rolled in with other categories though?
No, so if you see this,
Yeah.
these 77 students that took the assessment are
Oh, so,
economically
okay, my bad.
disadvantaged. It's
Yeah,
the
I
high
didn't see
needs.
that one.
The high needs is the one that gets
That gets rolled in.
Yeah,
Alright.
so like a kid that is in this high needs category could be in this group, and this group.
Right. And I only ask because to address some of the critics that insist on comparing us to more affluent communities.
Yeah.
That's probably the one metric that you could compare and
Yeah.
somewhat be apples to apples.
Yeah, no, so
But
like
the same-
in the white category, you could have a kid that's economically disadvantaged or a kid
Right.
with disabilities.
But he could show up in multiple
could have-
categories.
I think,
Absolutely.
yeah. All right, so our math, again, our math data overall, when you look at the district, I mean, I don't think it looks terrible. Again, if we're looking at, I guess, minimal either ups or downs. So, like I said, no change would be what I get out of this. That basically, if you looked at the 2017 kids and the 2018 kids, there's really no change. Some go up, some go down, but then when we actually look at it by school, it looks a little different. So this is just the aggregate of all the kids, third grade through 8th grade, but if we looked at it by school, it does look a little different. So then in math, we're showing decline in every single area except for our white population, which actually met the target, according to this. And I think the only outlier, well, there's a couple outliers, huh? You have your ELs and the Hispanic Latino group who took a big, strong kind of dive on that. Science, again, in the same ballpark, but showing decline. And I think it's it's really, science is difficult because you're talking about a 5th grade test and an 8th grade test, and in between there's all kinds of standards. So we teach some standards in 6th grade, some in 7th grade, some in 8th grade, and then they're being tested on in 8th grade. As an example. So we're just going to keep looking at the tests, trying to figure out what makes sense in terms of the way that we structure our courses. But we're also looking to bring in other kinds of courses and make it more hands-on, like Project Lead the Way. We're looking at it to bring it into the 8th grade science course. So hopefully we'll see results with that. This is the high school. High school met target according to this. The economically disadvantaged Hispanic Latino group.
And one of our challenges with like high school science, and we've tried a couple different things over the last few years, is what's different from some of our other EL groups is we have this life population at the high school level where a number of the students, and that's why you see some big disparities, because we have a group of students who have maybe had like a 1st or 2nd grade education in their native country. They come to the high school and are within a year are taking the MCAS in a language that they're not familiar with and trying to catch up maybe 7 or 8 years academically. So you'll see some of those disparities at the high school level that you won't necessarily, or you might see sometimes at the elementary level.
So these are the growth scores. So the growth scores, our target is 50. We're just about there, or more. I mean, I think the one I'm most concerned about, I guess, would be the lowest performing at the high school. But I also think they have a great program in place that can pick those kids up.
And historically, with growth, at 40 to basically 59, and I don't know because it moved from a median to a mean number, so I'm not sure how that shifts that game.
Yeah, that 40
but
to
historically,
60.
it's been 40 to 59 or 60. Over 60 would be considered high growth overall. So all the numbers for ELA are within that, really, really solid growth.
Yeah. Growth scores for the high school. And I believe they're still comparing 8th grade scores to 10th grade scores on the growth.
But we want to verify that.
We want to verify that. But I don't know what else they would compare it to.
I can't think of anything either, but it's just because I've shifted some things, we want to be sure.
And that's at the individual student level?
Yeah.
So how I did in 8th grade compared to how I did in 10th grade?
Correct, and this is the aggregate of that. So,
Okay.
like for high school ELA, it was 57, which is a very, very strong number. For 3 through 8, it's 50.5, which I consider, a really good number too.
And so this would have been, these 8th graders, or 10th graders now that were 8th graders, that would have been prior to some of the changes that were done to the curriculum at the middle school level, right?
So, actually, 2 years ago, did the 8th graders didn't take it on the computer, did they? I don't remember. I don't remember. 2 years ago, they might have.
Was it Park 2 years ago? Were we
Oh
still
yeah,
in Park?
I think it was.
They did paper and pencil park though at Stacy 2 years ago, I want to say. Because last year was the first year they did
the infrastructure wasn't there.
Yeah, last year was the first year we
I
did
think it was
across the
Park.
board.
So yeah, that's another
So they're comparing Park
weird
to the next generation.
comparison.
But the growth number kind of works because they're just taking like how you did
All the
on one
kids.
test compared to
Yeah.
how you did on another test and what kind of growth you made. So you could really compare it to any two things and get some kind of growth.
We weren't doing algebra in 8th grade back then, right? We started that last
We,
year? Or was it
2 years ago was the first year of that, I
Okay.
think, I believe.
In
Is that
8th
right?
grade?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
No, they've been doing it. Not everyone. Is that what you're at? Not all the students were doing it, but they definitely had.
But we put the emphasis to get
Some
more
groups,
students into
yeah.
algebra.
Right.
Is this the third year or the second? This 10th grade group went through that though.
Okay.
'Cause I think it's year.
I was gonna say
I
something.
probably could have answered that question better 3 hours ago. Because I'm trying to do it in my head right now, and I'm just not sure.
All right. So 4-year cohort graduation rates, as you can see, we're doing really well, exceeding targets. Extended engagement, though, on the other hand. So that's the group that's started 9th grade 5 years ago. How are they doing all the way through? And you can see that it's dipped a little bit. And I guess to me, it wouldn't be, I'm not surprised that our economically disadvantaged are the ones that are declining the most, you know, for a number of reasons. I think this is certainly a success because our dropout rate had been trending in an upward direction, and it seems to have been starting to go down, which is great. So we met the target there. It exceeded the target in a number of areas. This is our EL, our progress towards attaining English language proficiency, and again, that's within 6 years. That's the goal of starting the program. Met or getting there.
So how does that work for the high school?
You know what? I'm not sure, because if you figure some of these kids are just starting high school, but some of these kids they still have that level. So say it's level 2 or 3. They've been in the program for a few years. Maybe they started at Stacy. I think they do it individually to try to figure out where this kid will be in 6 years based on the score that they got on that access test. I know we think like high school, all these kids are just coming in and starting in high school, but there's still a large group of kids that start at Stacy, right? And they've got a few years of access testing under their belt.
And I think it may, and again, I could be talking out of school here too, but I think it takes into account the progression through like the levels. You started like, level 0 through level 5, and as well as kind of exiting out of the program.
Craig, in the top box, the 418, does that seem like a low number to you? For ELL and former ELI, that's across the district, or that's just?
It is a low, 418 and 67.
Which is
Yes,
So
low,
that's
isn't it?
3 through, that's 3
That's
through
3
8.
to
The
8.
top one is the whole,
It's 3 to 8. So we just talked to Jen the other day, and she said they just crossed the 600 threshold, right?
Yeah,
200
I
and
believe so.
600.
665, I think we're at actually.
That was last year, though. Sorry, this number. This is from last year. But also keep in mind that we get a number of kids after access testing is over who wouldn't show up on this.
Okay.
And then there's also kids at the K2 level that are part of the EL program that aren't reflected in the numbers as well. And it doesn't include the fells, it's just the Ls, I believe.
It is.
No, it has former, right? Is that what you mean by fell? Former?
Oh yeah, but
It just seems low to me, I just was curious, that's all.
but if they're former, they're not being tested on access.
So I'm not sure where that number's
Maybe it
coming
should just
from.
say EL.
It should.
Okay.
I think it's just
Okay.
they just list those
That's fine.
groups all the way down.
Okay, thanks.
It's the same numbers. Can you go back, Craig, just to pull up? Is it the same numbers for the? Yeah, the numbers
Yeah.
are identical.
Yep.
So it's gotta be just our L population.
Okay.
It only grades 3, 4, and 5.
3 through
Three
8.
through
Oh, that was
eight.
that was the 8.
Yep, and then the high school one is 60, the number 67.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, and don't forget, we also have K1 and 2 who aren't factored
Got
in
it.
this.
Yep.
Thank
And
you.
that's where I would think the majority of them
It's a
are.
little slow.
Oh, is that what you said?
No.
All right. Roll back the tape. All right. So chronic absenteeism, I think we went over that. 10% is what the mark is, and I think we heard about it at meetings about Tim putting a lot of emphasis on chronic absenteeism, and we talked to him today. He's like, "Geez, I didn't even know it was going to be on as one of the measures," and I'm not going to show it to you today because we're getting real long. But when you look at the Woodland data, you can see it really made a difference with his kids. So that was good. This is a little concerning that our high school chronic absenteeism is 21% of the students. And that's the whole,
We
that's this
still
whole
met the
student body.
target, but we still think that's a very, very high number.
Yep, it went down, so it went down from one year to the next. And Josh did put some things in place, to kind of highlight for students why being at school is important.
And getting to school on time, too.
Yeah, getting to school on time, too. So,
I think that's probably a good area where the data is deceiving, because you're getting 3 points. It may be an area you can still want
and
to
that's why
improve
it's
on.
tough to do comparisons, and it's tough to because there's this to me would be problematic.
And you get a lot of points.
Yeah, and we're getting more points than we did in a couple other spots where I feel like we're doing pretty well.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
just as an
that's a
example.
good example.
yeah. So that's why I think take all of this with a grain of salt, and I think there's probably adjustments to come, because I'm sure when I go to the superintendent meeting, there's going to be concerns for various reasons.
The EL number really stands out there, though. That's
Which one are you on?
on the absenteeism.
Yep.
46%
Yep.
rate. That's,
Yep.
Yeah.
how do you even address that? It's,
Some of that, there's a few factors at play there, and we've got to dig into it a little bit more, but there's a transience to the population that we see at the high school level. I think, some of the SLIFE students, there's kids who work that keep them out of coming
Yeah.
to school. There's a lot of other factors there, and I think it's something we're digging into, is how do we engage those
Yeah.
students in a way that they see a clear value to attendance and completion.
Yeah, I mean, I also think they get certain things by just being enrolled. Doesn't necessarily have to come to school, but just being enrolled as far as benefits, right? I think there is a group of kids that are just coming to school to learn English, and once they feel like they've learned enough English, they're going into work.
And there's a period of time where they're still enrolled as a student,
Yeah.
and that drives some of the numbers too. So it might be 20 or 30 days before we kind of pull them from the rolls, and that drives some of those numbers.
We always do very well in this area. The participation rates, most of our very, very, very few kids don't participate, which is great. I think there are other districts that really struggle with this, and in fact, there are a lot of districts that, I don't remember the other one, they have to be, they're in that other category, which is in need of assistance, because they don't have enough kids that take the test, so, I think that's good for our students, good for our staff. We can go into every school and through the same thing, but I think based on the time, it kind of makes sense to do that maybe next week, if you want, or not. It's up to you.
Or not.
I think that's a lot of data for one night. I'll
It's a
just
lot
speak
of
for
data.
myself.
Right. It's a lot that we've been kind of trying to sift through and see what we can get from it and how we can use this data to really make improvements. But as you can see, it's hard.
It's really hard to draw conclusive conclusions, because and I think there's going to be more shifts as we move forward, because I think and I think the state has kind of said that they're probably going to make some adjustments. One example, Craig and I were talking about today, is we had a 57 growth rate for the high school, and that was just a met target. But another one was 0.5 higher than the thing, and that was an exceeded target. So figuring out how they actually calculate some of those categories, and are they all being calculated accurately? Because just looking at the numbers, there seemed to be a little inconsistency, but I don't know what kind of formulas they're applying to each kind of
Yeah.
level of the process.
I like the direction that the state's
I
going
agree.
in terms of accountability, because it's using multiple measures, not just that one. And I think when the report cards come out later, what's that, towards the winter, you're gonna see other measures on the report cards, the district report cards, school spending, I think, is gonna actually be on the report cards of all the districts. So it's gonna be right up in front how much the schools districts spend per student. But I also am excited for our work with MCIEA, because we're gonna have that other dashboard that's gonna put together not only this information, but it's also gonna use survey data from students and parents and staff. So I'm excited to see what that's gonna look like. We're not gonna have it this year, but maybe next year, so.
I just want to add that when the community looks at these scores, I think we have to give the school district some time to go through all of this, because to your point, this whole way of calculating is completely different from anything
Mhm.
we've seen before. And what you didn't share tonight is all the individual student
Mhm.
reports and really digging into test questions and how
Mhm.
individual
Mhm.
kids performed and patterns of how schools, like where did a school do really well and where did a school find, oh, it looks like we needed to do more work in geometry or measurement. And so I just think it takes a lot of time.
Mhm.
Not that we don't want to expedite it to move forward and use the data the way it's intended, which is to support student learning.
Yeah.
But I think when the reports come out and people start looking at things, they have to allow us time to go through them. And
Yeah.
some of the areas where we scored poorly, chronic absenteeism, challenges with EL, special education, every single district in the state is going to be dealing with those same types of numbers.
Right.
So some of the challenges are not going to be just unique to Milford because
Right.
of the nature of some of our student populations, and those are the areas that we're going to have to look at
Right.
and figure out where can we provide better
And-
supports where we can.
That's a good point, and I would say if parents are concerned, talk to the teacher. You know, I think teachers, whenever MCAS data comes out, as a teacher, as an administrator, it's really, really an anxious time because you kind of feel like, whether you did good or bad, you feel like you're out there, right? These are the scores. These are the kids that were in front of you. You're responsible for this. But what people need to understand is it's one day, it's one test. That's it. I really think these scores on their own don't give our teachers the kind of due respect that they deserve. Our teachers work really hard and they look at this data. Believe me when I tell you, when they see things that are declines, they're not happy with it. And they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that we do make improvements. So I just wanted to put that out there, I guess.
And I would say the state's moving in a healthier direction because we're moving away from that comparison of districts.
Yeah.
I think people are still going to naturally try to do that, and even there was something in the Boston Globe today, but it's really not an accurate way of looking at it. And I think if we take the approach that schools are complex environments, we're committed to improving in a lot of different areas. I think Craig's point is a great one. If a teacher's particular class didn't do as well as they expected, they really internalize that, and they take it really personally because they have a lot of pride in what they do. So that's an excellent point. So I think this is going to be a work in progress for I think every district in the state. It's definitely going to be a work in progress for us because we're still trying to kind of figure out what some of it means, and we don't necessarily want to chase test scores. What we really want to do is create fantastic educational experiences for students that get them where they need to go. That's really the goal. When they graduate Milford High School, are they able to take that next step wherever that they want to do, and do they have the tools in the tool belt to kind of do that and be successful? Is really what we're looking for. This is, as Craig was saying, is one indicator, but it's one of many indicators that we look at. It's just the most public indicator, so it's what everybody talks about.
I think that's probably what resonates the most with me, Craig. There's so much data, which I'm certain will be looked into and utilized, but to see the DESE starting to go in a different direction, that the rating system wasn't working, the work you're already doing at that collaborative, sort of being on the cutting edge of that, I think speaks to where we want to be as a district, and should be recognized.
Yeah, I think this is a good, healthy conversation. I'd love to continue this
Yeah.
dialogue and maybe at the next meeting drill down to the individual
Sure.
school level and then at
Would-
future
well,
meeting.
Can I make a recommendation that maybe we do one school at a time for the next
That's a
2
good
or
idea.
3 meetings so we don't just get inundated with data?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right.
And at some point down the road, I'm sure you guys are gonna, there are things you're gonna learn from this data,
Yep.
right? So, to be able to share that with us and the community would be
Yeah,
important.
and I really think the most important part of it is sitting with teachers and going over their data with them, right? So for example, I had a meeting with the 8th grade science teachers and we just looked at a few things. And I think they're the ones that are gonna say, oh yeah, now I know why the kids missed that we didn't get to that for some reason, or we did it after the test, or whatever. We covered it in 6th grade and we never circled back to it. So that's the most important part, is we get the teachers in the room, but again, when do we do that? So.
Quick question. I probably should know this, but I don't. It's not ringing a bell. If we have like a lot of kids that are coming into the high school that are not English speaking kids and they haven't had that much education, and 2 months down the road they're taking MCAS. I mean, is there a way that can they not take the MCAS for that one reason? It's like, hey, I just started school. I can't even speak English.
Yeah.
Why am I taking the steps?
If you're saying the high school,
or schools in general. I mean, I just use that.
at
as
the
an
high
example.
school level, I would recommend that they do, because they have to pass the test in order to actually get their
Right.
diploma, right? At the other levels, they have if they're within their first year, they have to take the science if it falls in that, and they have to take the math. It's optional for them to take the language arts one.
Okay.
However, we usually recommend that they do. It doesn't count, but at least they get to see it. You know, maybe a kid it's the first week, maybe we wouldn't do that to them, but.
Right. No, I mean, I just in my brain, I thought that was something that we didn't do. but-
And the test is obviously only administered in English. It's never administered in the native language
Right.
of that child.
Right.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Craig.
A lot of info there.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, future agenda items. Anybody want to add anything to the next agenda? So, Chris?
Yeah. Sorry. Kevin, so I reached out to Kevin, I guess, more from the parent side, in attending the Stacy Middle School back to, open house night. Prior to the open house, there was a presentation on Google Calendars. Presentation more was on how the how to use the calendar as opposed to the interface between the faculty, the student, and the parent. So I guess my hope is to see some better integration. I feel like we're still a little bit behind. We've put this big effort in for digital learning, and how we can make it also digital learning from an executive function standpoint. Google Classroom is available, Google Calendar is available. I don't know if it can necessarily integrate in. So again, just trying to get a better update on where we are, what direction we're going to, in a better training direction of what we're going to go in for the teachers. Some of the teachers are able to utilize it in a way that I was presented and I understood, and I think other teachers are still trying to figure out how best utilize it. So again, how we can get everybody on board at schools to use it as a tool, and to help the kids, and whether it's tiered from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade. So.
Yep. So do you mind if I comment on that, Joe? So why don't we put it on the agenda for next week? And I think it'll be more of an update, because I think you're going to see some communication from the principal, from Stacy, as well as kind of some on-the-ground training for kids. And hopefully that's going to clarify, as well as what the expectations are. So I think that's going to help, but I think there's still going to be, I think like anything else new, there's probably going to be lingering questions after that. But I think this next week you're going to see a lot more communication around that topic and kind of clarity. But we'll present on it at next Thursday's meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if, I'm assuming it would be Dr. Joseph that's presenting, if you could kind of show some of that interface. On board.
Yeah,
I know a lot of times, he can explain it, but I think if we can actually have some visual up there too.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Be a great thing.
Yep. Perfect.
Anybody else? Next on the agenda, old business. Okay. And do we have executive
We
session?
do not.
Okay, so we do not have executive session, so can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion by Jen, seconded by Jim. Thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. Sorry.